I'm Lance from Mint Design, and I'm here today with Gareth, who is one of New Zealand's experts in privacy, information and technology law. He has delivered privacy training for the Office of the Privacy Commissioner and is the co-founder of the South Island Privacy Network. So Gareth, almost everyone in the online world has received numerous emails recently with updated privacy policies. Can you tell me why we're receiving these?
Well, that's a great question. I know I've received quite a lot of these. The reason why we're getting them is a new law came into force last month, which is called GDPR. That stands for the General Data Protection Regulation. Now, this is a law that was passed in Europe, and it gives certain rights to people in terms of what information is collected by organisations, what the organisation has to tell the individual when they're collecting the information, and what they can do with it. Most organisations have customer databases, but they aren't really sure if people opted in or not and gave consent for their information to be used, and that's why we're getting these requests.
So who is at risk here?
Well, even though this is European legislation, potentially every organisation in the world that collects information could be captured by it.
From your big corporates to your one-man bands, surely not everyone's going to be affected in the same way. What signs should you be looking for to know if you're at risk?
Well, there are some really big differences in organisations in terms of whether they're likely to be running a risk or not. Any New Zealand businesses that do business in Europe are definitely going to be captured. If you have a business that is based in New Zealand but is aimed at people overseas, you could also be captured. So, for example, if you have a website that you know is focused at people internationally, you could be captured. Finally, if you've got a database that includes people in Europe and you send them newsletters or other types of marketing, you could be captured as well.
I know Kiwi businesses would rather bury their head in the sand sometimes. No one's going to be compliant for compliance sake. What sort of consequences are we looking at here?
I guess the scariest consequences, they're huge financial penalties. So if you are prosecuted for breach of GDPR, you could be fined 20 million euros or 4% of turnover, whichever is the greater. So this is definitely something to sit up and take notice about.
So 20 million euros seems quite a large fine. Is this actually going to be enforced?
Well, that's the million-dollar question. No one really knows. Obviously, this is legislation in Europe. The priority is likely to be businesses in Europe and those large multinationals. However, they have made it clear that they do want to enforce it internationally. And so if you're a Kiwi business and you are captured by this, you are running a risk.
My understanding is Kiwi businesses fall into either one of two camps. Either you've got no intention of doing business with people in the EU, or you rely on people in the EU. You sell internationally, you're an accommodation provider. In both cases, you need to take action. Is this correct?
Yeah, that's definitely correct. Obviously, if you fall into that second category where you rely on people in Europe for part of your business, you need to be far more careful. But even if you don't intend to do business in Europe and you don't intend to deal with people in Europe, you need to make sure that you're not accidentally captured by this legislation as well. And there are some practical things that you can do.
Outside of Europe and the GDPR, I understand New Zealand's set to put some new privacy laws in place. How will these affect New Zealand businesses?
Well, I think these new laws are likely to affect us even more. Obviously, it's Kiwi legislation firstly. So at the moment, we have the Privacy Act 1993, which is 25 years old. Now, when that first came out, that was cutting-edge legislation, but it is falling behind. Obviously, with things like GDPR, we've realised that we do need to refresh our privacy laws, and society is pushing for this.
Do you have any indication what those consequences will be?
No 20 million euros, but they are increasing the fines possible under the Privacy Act that the Privacy Commissioner can issue. It's proposed that the fines at the moment are increased to around $10,000 for each breach. Now, obviously, that's not as big as those under GDPR, but certainly that would hurt, paying $10,000, especially if there are multiple breaches and there could be multiple times that you have to pay that amount. There's also likely to be things like mandatory breach reporting. And finally, there's the risk that you're going to end up on the front page of the paper. Now, that can really impact on customer trust, and it's unlikely to be good for business.
So what everyone wants to know is, what do I do next?
Well, there's some really practical things that you can do. The starting step is you need to work out what information do you collect. And it's amazing how many businesses don't actually know that. Once you know what information you collect, you need to work out, have you actually told people that you're collecting it, and what have they said you can do with it? Now, often organisations don't know that either. A really good way to start off that process is to get a technical audit, which looks at things like your website and your online marketing, and works out what you're actually collecting, what you're doing with it, and what you've told the customers too. Once they've done the technical audit, then they should really be talking to a privacy expert, whether that's a privacy consultant or privacy lawyer. This is a very specialised area, and it's not something that your local conveyancer can deal with. And then put that advice into practice.
Thanks, Gareth. At Mint, we've developed a package containing 3 key solutions to help all businesses, big and small. We've put a comprehensive system in place for your technical audit that will give legal experts like Gareth all the info they need to help you become compliant. Together with Gareth, we've invested in the groundwork for responding to this law change. This means Mint clients can work with Gareth to get a compliant privacy policy with significant savings in legal fees. With Mint's technical capabilities, we'll provide a solution to make your website compliant, so get in touch today.